You're listening to Bellwethers podcast with Matthews Joseph.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to a brand new episode of Bellwethers podcast. And today we have Jaison James with us. Jaison James is my beloved big brother and also my mentor and a long friend who I've been known for the past 7 years. And it's such a joy to have him on the podcast. He is the co-founder of Church Social Blocks. He's also a youth pastor at the same time. And also he has been collaborating with Just Believe Creative. So that's a lot of stuff that he's doing. But trust me when I say he's one of the most creative people that I've ever met, and that is definitely true. So without further ado, welcome, Jaison. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It is an honor and it is an absolute pleasure to have you today.
Thank you, brother. It's a joy to be here.
Yeah, and so before we start, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself? Your story, definitely your story and what you do. And I know it's like kind of a very short description that on short time frame, but yeah, we'll just go really quick over it.
Yeah, my name is Jaison, and I'm currently in Cochin, Kerala, and childhood has been great, has been crazy as well. I have lost my parents, my parents left me when I was 8. I grew up with my grandparents, and I was not so for God because I never believed in God till I was in my 15th or 10th grade, where I had a crazy miraculous encounter with Jesus that changed my life, gave me a direction, sense of understanding, purpose to my life. Ever since then, life has been good. Had to go through a lot of hardships. I started working when I was 16. I couldn't go for my studies, but later things started to change as God slowly unwrapped the gift. Then I studied in Bombay University. I completed my Bachelor's of Management Studies. I topped in the uni exams. And then I went ahead and studied theology in Singapore. Then I started working with a church here in Cochin for the last 8 years called Exodus. Being faithful, being consistent. And I think that is one of the greatest traits that taught me never to quit, but always trust God and keep moving. Currently launching my own companies and doing things that God has called me, but it took a long years of labor and hard work. But I think today when I look back, I think I can connect the dots, and it's beautiful how God has made it possible. Yeah, that's all I can say.
Oh, that's an amazing story. I think we will have a separate session probably in the future where we can share your whole story, because that is worth hearing it. And as far as I know, your life has impacted me a lot and has changed me a lot. And it's definitely, and I hope like while we are walking through the session, while we're talking about different stuff, I hope like every single person who listens to this also impacts their lives, and they do understand the real change what happens in people. So yeah, without further ado, like let's jump into the questions of one of the first things like I want to jump on is about consistency, because you just mentioned that you are consistent in doing stuff with God. So here's the thing, like and especially being in the creative industry, being a professional in the creative industry where you're doing stuff on a day-to-day basis, how does consistency and persistence define professionals in the creative industry, and how does that, and at the same time, but outside of the creative industry, how do you think that defines a person's character and a person's character?
Well, I think I heard this term consistency when I was in my Bible school in 2014, where an amazing teacher called Dr. A.R. Bernard, he came down to teach us, and he said 3 things that defines a man, 3 things that defines a great leader, and 3 things that every woman wants in a man. And he said decisiveness, consistency, and strength. And that really shook me. And I'm like, wow, I'm hearing that word for the first time. And then he started explaining each word. And this word consistency really touched my heart, because I think everybody needs to be consistent in whatever firms they are. Like we grew up, and especially coming from India, we know how much importance we give to studies, especially, over here, go to study, become this. But when I look back, I'm like, we wake up every day and we go to school, and we've been continuing that for what, 12 years regularly. I think that is the simplest definition of consistency, doing the same thing over and over again. And to answer to your question, consistency and persistence or endurance in the field that you are in, I think that really matters a lot, because I've seen people, especially in our generation, who skipping stones, like, jumping from one to another. And what you miss out when you do jumping from one to another is the things that you can learn being focused at one thing, the bad things. And I love what Nick Vujicic, who said, from a man without limbs, I become a man without limits. And I did that by doing the same thing and understanding and accepting who I am and being regular at the same thing over and over again. You wake up and you don't change. You wake up every day, your hands are not growing out, your legs are not growing out, and you seeing yourself the same thing, every single day on the same in the mirror. And that really touched me, because I think consistency really defines and make you perfect in the same thing that you're doing. Doing podcast, if you listen to your first podcast, and the way that you are doing right now, simply shows what is the result of being consistent over these years. And being persistent even in the midst of pandemic, or even in the midst of your busy schedule, you make a point to do that, and that makes you perfect, and that is helping a lot of people. And knowingly and unknowingly, the thing that I did for the last 8-9 years, serving in the same place over and over again, doing the same thing, even sometimes you want to quit, sometimes you want to just run away from the things that we're doing, but being consistent, or I want to rephrase it saying being faithful in the place that you are in, being faithful in the field prepares you to be fruitful in the world. So I think that is the definition for my life, and it really matters a lot to professional or whatever creative industry, maybe whatever industry that you are in. It really plays an important role.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. Well, I want to add on, like, I think I heard this the other day from one of my friends who were saying this. It's about reading and reading consistently. And I know you told me this one quote, like, leaders are readers. That's like I heard it first from you. But this one also just like adds more perspective to it, because he was still telling me, like, every individual, especially if you're a leader, you should read an hour a day. And when you read for 1 hour a day, that's 4% of the day. So 4%. So 1 hour is like 4% of 24 hours that you have. So, and if you continue this with 4% of the day every day, 10 years down the lane, you will be in a position far better than where your colleagues and your competitors would be right now. That's like that 1%, that 4% of reading is going to put you way ahead of you in like 10 years. And that's a power of consistency, because I feel like consistency is something very underrated, especially in our generation. We just overlook it and we just underlook it. It's just like we think like, okay, that's too much, we just don't need to do that. But I feel like one of the consistency is like kind of like the compound interest that works. The more you don't see a beneficial rate in like maybe in the first 10 years, but after the first 10 years is when it really starts to pick up the pace. And maybe 20 years or 30 years down the lane, you might see a big change. And one of there was this book, I don't remember who wrote the book, but it was an admiral in the US Army, and the name of the book is titled Make Your Bed. And it's a very ironic thing, because most as leaders, we don't make our beds, and making the bed is like the most important thing. And he also says this thing is yeah, I know, he's actually showing me the bed right now. But
I make my bed. That's what I
yeah, I
show
know.
him.
I get it. I understand. Yeah. So, but what this person was telling is like making your bed in the morning is actually an act of consistency, because you have accomplished the first major task of the day, which is actually helping you to give the confidence and the confidence to do the next thing over forward, like in job, in every single thing that goes forward. So that's how powerful consistency is. And when I just wanted to add on while we were just like talking about consistency, because I feel that is a very powerful thing, and also it is a very crucial thing at the same time as well. Alrighty. So yeah, I'm gonna jump on to my next question. So you have so you're an artist. I know you do this, like you do definitely want to do stuff. You love hand art, like original artworks which are done by the hands, and that's something that I know you have worked on some stuff, and I have seen some of your works too. But how do you think, like, with the widespread availability of softwares in the millennium, like, You can replicate everything, pretty much everything, in a Photoshop or Illustrator. And with the availability of such softwares, how do you think the handouts or original artworks are being replaced with graphic designs, and what's your take on that?
Well, I think first of all, definitely I love to call myself an artist because I love to think creatively. But there are very, very limited things that I do with my hands, especially when it comes to drawing or painting, because I'm not an artist like that. But my thinking is very wired in a way that I think a creative way. For example, if you give me a project, first thing that comes to my mind is how I delegate that creatively, how I can distribute it creatively in a way that this goes in that pocket and that goes there, and it automatically comes to me, and I understand maybe I am wired that way. Now, answering to your question, I think no art can be replaced. Every art has a place in the world or a space in the world, because there is a definite crowd or a niche that follows that particular set of art. I know a person who only scribbles, and he does that, and he's a millionaire right now. I forgot his name. He's there on YouTube. And there's another person who just draws lines, and by drawing lines, and she is doing amazing. She travels around the world to paint lines on the buildings. So there are creativity and art is it's crazy. It's like an infinite loop. It never ends. Sometimes my brother sends me videos of people who make art with stapler pins, or nails on the walls, and when you go back, zoom out, it's a picture, and I'm like, God, how unending is this creative avenue as such. So I think there is no replacement for any sort of art. No matter how much the technology grows up, it will only complement to the art. It will only make it simpler for us to understand and create art. But art in itself, I think it is irreplaceable when it comes to hand art or hand drawn art or a digital platform or a designing. For me, I love graphic designing on computers or on softwares. I check out all the latest common apps or softwares that I can work easily. So sometimes now when I use my iPad or my phone, people ask me, you design on it? I'm like, yeah, I design on this because I don't have time to go to Photoshop at the moment. So anything that makes my work smooth or fluent or cohesive, I love to do that, and I'm grateful for all the amazing developers who are making things easy for us. So it never replaces, but I think it always complements to the art. That's what I feel.
Oh wow, yeah, that definitely, and absolutely, I agree with that. That's definitely true. Although we see we live in a digital era, I feel like it's always good to go back to the basics where we have the handiworks, where we can actually enjoy, like, some a different type of creativity, to be honest. And also, I'm jumping on to my next question. Why did you first start in your profession? You were hustling at the side with your creative works and your designing works. So how were you like able to explore your passion as a side hustle with your profession? And I definitely know there's like a ton of creatives out there today who are actually working their way out, in a very competitive world. But I definitely want to know, like, what would be some of the things, like, when you started, and you had definitely had the issue of hustling. It's too much work, work 8 hours and go back to designing stuff. And how do you feel that was, and how do you feel like, what are some like takeaways that you can actually give to the generation who are actually coming up with designing stuff right now?
Yeah. For a matter of fact, I'm still working and I'm still side hustling. So I love the fact that I kind of, those are my, what do you call that, my vacation. The mini vacation every day is the place where I come back to a canvas which is empty and create something new. I think seeing it like that rather than a work, it really helps me. And the other day, while I was in my washroom, can you believe that I call it the creative room? You brush or you just relax and you get a lot of ideas. And I was thinking, I most of the times what happened in our generation, at least to the people, because I'm also a youth pastor, I'm also a counselor, I get to speak to hundreds of youngsters on a regular basis. And what I understood, or talking to over and over all these people all these while, is we often have a tendency to follow the money or follow wealth or follow success so much that we end up, failing over and over again. I love what Mahendra Singh Dhoni, who was Indian captain, who said, people always focus on the results and forget to enjoy the process. But I love to enjoy the process. That's why the results that you see outside on the board. And I like that. I like that fact that we have to be people who love to enjoy the process, because for me, my passion is definitely to do something in the creative industry, make things creative, help people communicate creatively. That's my vision. That's my passion. And I figured, in fact, God has been telling me, let passion drive you. Let passion comes first, and everything else. Wealth should be a byproduct of you pursuing your passion. I'll repeat that. Wealth or success should follow you because you are pursuing your passion. And when you are pursuing your passion, no matter you're working on a day, full-time job on a day-to-day basis, but still when you come back to your room, if you can spend that spare maybe 1 hour or 2 hours, just like you said about reading, in doing your thing. Because designing, I love to do that. I love designing for people. I love doing designs for myself. I love to, keep myself telling stories. People who follow me on Instagram, I love telling stories through my cameras, and I love spending time on that. And for me, thankfully, I never felt it tiresome, because some people tell me, you take a picture and why you want to edit so much, and then you put it out for just 24 hours, it just goes off. Why do you want to spend so much of time? And I always go back to the quote that's said by Bishop T.D. Jakes. He said, great people do small things excellently. So I love that fact that, we need to be people who are great, think great, do things great and inspire people. And I see a lot of people follow that trial. Now, coming back to your question, working a day job with the church every single day, I finally realized I need to integrate creativity into my day-to-day work so that I can really run the race with no tiring. So what I did is I worked with the church and I took up the creative initiatives in the church. I started helping the churches with the social media. I started, helping people with, helping my church over here, Exodus, creatively communicate the gospel through design, through videos, through photography, through social media. And slowly, like 9 years down the line, now when I look back, the things that I'm going to yet to do came out because I started integrating these small things that I like to do with my day-to-day work. Now, people who are working an IT job would be thinking, I love creativity. How can I integrate that into, my IT job or my IT profession? I would say, make it colorful. How about look at your desk, make it colorful. If you come to my room at the moment, you can see a lot of color pins on my notice board. Whenever I see colors, it just sparkles my ideas and make me think, okay, I can work it out. Maybe you're not able to rightly integrate, like at the moment, integrate your creative things into your work, but you can actually keep these things around you that will make you creatively think. Because many a times people get confused by creativity, thinking you have to produce something, a product should come out of your creativity. I think wrong. I don't think that's right, because you can either you can be creative and bring a product out, or you can do a work by creatively thinking. So creative thinking is a place where it's just with your brain. You do things creatively. You come to a solution. You are a person who runs a boutique, and look at all the marketing ideas that is running around. It's all creative, and you think creatively and make your brain a creative room or a creative hub where you can just sit, ideate, creatively think and come out of a problem with a beautiful solution, may it be a direct solution or a small solution or a shortcut, but it all came out of a result as because of creativity. Now, I understand there are not everybody is as creative as another person, but you are creative in your own way. You are creative in the avenue that you are in. So may it be small or big, I think everybody has a little bit of creativity inside of them, because I believe everybody is created for a purpose, created by a God who is Elohim, called the creative God. He created this world out of nothing. He created you out of nothing. There's no other you. Look at yourself. You're so creative because you are different than your brother or your friend or your neighbor. Looking at yourself, you understand you are created creatively by a creator God. Definitely his hands have touched you. His hands have made you. So there is a creative particle inside of you because you're created by a creative God. Realizing that and recognizing that in your profession, in your work, man, that brings a lot of difference. That's what I feel.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something very, very true, because I feel today creativity is a very generic term, honestly. We just made it just for creatives or people who actually work in the designing area or the production field, and we call them creatives. And every time someone tells me that, I'll say, no, that's so wrong. You could not be more wrong, because
True.
the same explanation that you said, our God is Elohim, he's the creative. So he's a master creative. So if he has so much creativity and so much nature, the way that the colors are put up, the way that every single thing, everything of nature has been given a color and identity, I feel that's the same with people, because he's definitely given that to each and every one of his sons and daughters. So everybody of us are creative, and in everything that we do, we can just like make things more creative. And I feel like creative leadership is also something that's been coming up very, very as a very, very fast growing thing right now in the 21st century. And if you look around, like, people need creative leadership. People are done with the old school leadership process tomorrow, and they're trying to fast track and make it more creative and make it more efficient right now. And I feel like that includes a huge ton of creativity. And also, I mean, if you're preaching or if you're talking, you add creative elements to the things that you're saying, so that the people are actually understanding that. And the way that you tell stories, creative storytellers, that's also becoming a big time thing right now. So
Right.
I feel like creativity is like a word that's just been put down for designers or production time people or photographers, but I feel like it should be put over everybody. But I also want to
Exactly.
ask Khan this question before we jump on to the next one, totally off the topic. About creatives getting paid. Definitely, I know that's like a big can of worms I'm opening, but I just want to just go over it real quick. How do you feel like being underpaid right now? I mean, if you actually look over India, or I feel like pretty much everywhere, creatives are underpaid. That's what I feel. And what I mean, and people who are listening to this, people who are actually in the creative space, are actually feeling that. And what are some, I mean, and I definitely know at some point you felt like you were underpaid with a particular job or a gig. And how do you overcome that feeling? How do you overcome that feeling of like, hey, I'm not worth it, or my work is not worth it? And you get that thoughts in your mind. How do you overcome that, and how do you just like work around it?
Whoa, that's a amazing question. I think every creative would face has a face like that, or might have faced that at least once in their life, or twice, or maybe consistently, I don't know. But yeah, I have been there. I've been there. For me, number one, to answer to your question, if I can break it down into three questions. Number one, creatives must be paid. That's number one thing. And because of course everybody who does work have to be paid, that's definitely there, unless they are volunteering themselves. But that is there. Number two is, yes, there are people who are being underpaid. Even a very price sensitive market like India, we're very concerned with price, and it is a very price sensitive market. But there is a level of sacrifice that comes to, when it comes to keeping yourself at a, fixing your value for your work, comes with a sacrifice, because everybody is not going to accept the price that you're going to quote. But that never devalues your work. And to all the creatives who are listening to me at the moment, I would say, make sure that you value your work in a way that you think that is right. And if the client is not accepting that, move on. Yes, we all need money, but you have to understand that keeping yourself, maybe starting small is okay. But if you are being underpaid regularly, that means you're not putting yourself in a state where you're not valuing your work as it should be. So make sure that you do. I love these people like Chris Do from the if you know the Future company and designing company. And then there's another guy called Nick Goodner. He's founder of the CITV Church. And these people say about, keeping yourself, valuing your work in a way that it has to be paid. So to the people of being underpaid, I think unless you put your feet right, and if you don't voice it out, you can be taken for granted. And I've been in that place where I've been taken for granted. So I started coding my price, or coding the rates, in a very stern factor, in a very stern manner, because I know the amount of work that I goes inside. People who might not be able to understand the amount of work that you put in to bring something out, they only see the product, they don't know the process, only so you can price it on the process, not on the product. Look at the process, look at the amount of work and sweat and hard work and time that you spend on the process. And I think evaluating and breaking down the process, you will be able to finally price your product in a very appropriate manner, and never be afraid to tell your price to the client that is asking. That's what I said in the beginning. There is a sacrifice. You might lose it, initially, but slowly you will build a confidence to understand. And will be a point there will be a point where people will appreciate your worth and understand it, and then will definitely appreciate it. And I want to add to the last question that he said. I love this scripture in Ephesians 2:10 in the Passion Translation, because we are speaking about passion. It says like this, and this is the quote for our company, and it says, "We have become God's poetry, a recreated people that will fulfill the destiny He has given to each one of us." And I love the first part. We have become His poetry. Poems are not easily understood by everybody who reads it, but by the poet who written it. And over the years, when people reread it, reading it again and again and again, people will be able to understand new insights and new meanings from that, because you are a poem. I think everybody who's created on this planet Earth needs to be a poem. People might not be understand what you are, what you're doing, but so much of insights, so much of passion, so much of purpose goes deep inside in each and every lines of your life. And that will speak to tons of other millions of people. Maybe like Krish Dhanam, who said in your podcast, doing a long swing, maybe 10 years down the line, when people look at you like, oh, wow, that's a long night, the overnight success. Yeah, that night took 10 years, but that's a long night. But you did it faithfully and consistently and persistently. That's good.
Yeah, definitely 100% agree to that. But I also want to jump on like one of the answers that I really love the answers. I want to jump onto that where you said taking sacrifices and saying no's. And I feel like that's I just want to add on a couple of stuff to that, because I feel not just in the creative industry, but I think in every industry it is important to say no. If you're especially a business, if you're especially an entrepreneur or a freelancer, you have to say no. Like, you might be, I've had this situation where I had to code people like, hey, this is what it costs to build a platform, and they're like, okay, hey, you know what, we don't want that, that's too pricey. And we try to lower the rates for them, but it never works out, and eventually what happens is like we lose the client. But honestly, I feel like I'm happy about that, because the value of the work that we are trying to put out has always a worth. And when you undermine the worth of the product that you're selling or the product that you're putting out, what happens is like the people try to undermine that as well. So the way, if you don't value your work, if you don't say that, okay, hey, you know what, this is actually 30,000 rupees worth of work or $30,000 worth of work, and then you try to put it, you try to make it like 15,000 worth, the value of the product that you're selling is actually diminishing, and which actually is diminishing your reputation. And sometimes people might say, hey, we don't want to go for it, but which is totally fine. But at the same time, I feel like it's also important to keep up with that standard that you set up as a creative, as an entrepreneur, as a business person, or whatever product you might be selling. But not losing the value of it, not undermining that value, is very, very important. And I just thought I should add that when you said about telling no's and sacrifices, because I feel like that's what a lot of people are actually thinking about as well. Alrighty, so I'm gonna jump into the last question here about you being a creative director, and you work on many creative projects, and a lot of creative stuff. And how do you think like being a creative director has impacted your personal life? And how was like, are there points where you actually try to implement the creative workspace ideas as a creative director into your personal life? How do you feel about that?
I think that question should be reversed, because of my personality, I became a creative director because I think creatively, I do things creatively, and understanding that I can do that in that aspect or that way made me to a place, or brought me to a place of creatively direct the projects that I am doing. May it be the social media handles of our church, or the content meeting that I sit for, or a creative project discussion that I sit off. It's all comes out of the personality that I am generally is, because I love colors. I love, I love to think creatively. I like to, do my to-dos. Even today, for the last many years, I've been continuously doing my to-dos on my to-do book, with pen and paper, not digital, though I have a lot of opportunity to do digital, but I try to keep it on the book and paper, because I think that way I'm able to articulate more, I'm able to understand more, and that really triggers my brain to work that way. So answering to a question, it really helps me. I mean, it complements both way, being a creative director in whatever aspect or whatever project that I'm working on. And it really reflects on my personality too, because every time I work on a new project, it helps me understand a way that or a solution, or come up with a solution, or come up with a design, or come up with a solution, or a process, a flow chart, in the way that I've never done before. So that really complements to my personal life too. If at all I face a problem in my daily life, I can actually work it out and sort it out. And there are so many instances that I came across a lot of apps or softwares that really help me to work towards my project. And after the project is done, I take that app, or that task management app, and I use it for my personal life. So it really works for me. It really works for me because it complements both. But again, I repeat, I think I became, or the thing that I do creatively is because it was already in me. Maybe down somewhere in life, I realized it, and I started spending time on it. I started working on it, towards it. And I got my first computer when I was in 10th grade or something. And, the initial softwares that I installed was Photoshop, and I didn't know nothing about it. But what I used to do is I try to make cricket posters, with cricket players, because I love cricket. And I have a friend who's currently in Ireland, and he's working in a software, and we together used to work, and he sent me his work, and there was no internet. The internet was there, but it was very slow, the dial-up connections, so we can't send email. So he takes in pen drive, he comes home, he shows me the design he does, and I show him the design that I do. Then what I used to do is, I take one music video from internet, go to the internet cafe, download it, and then come to my computer, use Movie Maker, Windows Movie Maker, and I put that video song, and then I find a similar upbeat, same, that beats per minute song from the internet, and I try to put this song for that video, and I cut it, and now finally I export it. It's a totally different video. Like, it's the motion is different, the song is different, but it matches so well. And I used to show this to all my friends. And I was in my 10th grade, used to show this to everybody. And currently, when I look at Instagram, a lot of people are doing it right now. And I'm like, ooh, so what I did in my past was not a mistake, because I used to enjoy it. I watch it and I laugh. You take Tamil movies or, Bollywood movies, and you take their dance and, take the visuals, and then you add some English, music to it. And then you see it. They play the dance. The dance moves so much match to the beats of the English song. So I used to love it. Why am I trying to say that? It is already in me, and I learned to enjoy the process from very young. I think doing all these things over the years, learning by myself, understanding things, and doing things creatively over and over and over again. Maybe small steps, small things. I'm not a painter and I'm not an artist, but I love scribbling, I love writing, I love experimenting with my handwriting and all these kind of things. May it be small or big, but it all complemented me to become where I am at the moment. Now when I do the things creatively for my organization or for my company or for the people that works along with me. When they look at it, when they see, oh, there is a solution that has been creatively communicated to them, it is a result of all these years of doing these small things and small steps, and enjoying things and laughing a lot, enjoying and talking to a lot of people, and reading a lot, working towards my skills, try to learn, also being humble enough to learn new ideas. Oh, you designed that graphic, can you teach me like how you do that? Even today, in my church where I work, I have a lot of graphic designers who are really excellent in what they do, and I have chats in my WhatsApp. I send them, please teach me how you created that brush. I love to learn. And just like again, I quote what Krish Dhanam said, we always are learners. We need to keep learning. That's how you lead. You keep learning. So I love to learn, and I love learning new things. And I have my inspiration boards on Pinterest or Behance, or I go around and I see people. Be humble enough to learn what others are doing, and slowly you will understand. You'll be able to ignite and spark the creativity that is inside you, and what you create is yours. And it be you might have been inspired by something else, but try to come out with what is your signature in it. Make sure that somebody sees what your work and they're like, oh, that's your work. Somebody listens to your podcast and they're like, oh, it's Matthew's podcast. There is a uniqueness in everything that we do. And I think that adding up all these things made me to do a creative direction in whatever project that I'm doing.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I feel like, especially when you said what you used to do in 10th grade is what Instagram has copied and made as reels. So, basically, but it's fun to see.
I don't know. I'm just saying, I think a lot of people, maybe the founder of these reels might have been doing the same thing, but he got the opportunity to make it into a reel. In fact, in reels, I see a lot of people do these kind of, adding another song and, doing, and it's so funny. I love enjoying those content at the moment. But yeah, I mean, it's universal. Creativity is universal, and
Definitely.
God, like I said, God is a God of all, and his creativity is reflecting in a lot of people. Same thing that you're doing might be ignited to another person totally on another side of the globe, because we serve the same God. Yeah,
very true. Yeah, and I feel like that's true, because that's how creativity spreads too. It's based on inspiration as well, because of the content that we put outside, like as creators or as in whatever feels like in digital or not digital, or even in leadership, or even the things that you do, the way that you do things, the things that you put outside actually is getting inspired by some people. See that and they get inspired by it and they want to try out
100%.
something. Very true, and that's how creativity works. It's contagious. Creativity is contagious,
Oh,
and yeah, and that's definitely a lot of stuff that you said, but yeah, really, I feel like that's a lot of insights, and pretty sure people want to listen to this episode 2 times, because this is like 30 minutes of a lot of content. But yeah, again,
I hope so.
yeah, it definitely is, and definitely I'm inspired, and definitely people who listen to this would be as well. And yeah, definitely, I think we have come to the end of our podcast, and we are end of the session actually. And yeah, I think we've been trying to get you on the podcast for like almost a year and a half now.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been so long. Yeah, but yeah, I'm glad we finally got to do it. And finally got to do this. So yeah, thank you, Roy. It was amazing having you here today, and and I really hope that what you're going to do in the plans that God has set for you in these next few years is gonna come out really good, and you're gonna inspire more creatives. And I really hope that you do it on a global level. And
Come on,
I
man.
feel like that's happening already. So yeah, so amazing, and so excited about you.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much for having me here. And a final word to everybody who's listening to me, people who are still searching for what you are doing. I want you to know, keep looking, don't stop, keep looking what you are doing, and always check out for your giftings, what you're good at, because your calling is hidden in your gifting. So make sure that you keep looking at it and keep working on it, and find it out. And eventually something new will birth out of you. So thank you so much. And you're doing what you're doing is amazing. Keep doing, bro. and I'm really proud of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, bro, and really appreciate it. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. That was Jaison James, co-founder of Search Social Box, and an amazing youth pastor and a creator as well. So make sure you guys go ahead and give him a follow on social media and check out some of the stuff that he does in the CRTV. It is amazing, and definitely follow him. Do reach out to him if you want some creative works done. You can use the code Matthews20 for a discount. So definitely he'll give you that. All right, guys. Once again, thank you so much for listening. Take care, and we will see you next week.